Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to come in on Friday the 13th uh, to talk about something that just happened with me that I think leads to other things related to this eclipse that is happening tomorrow. So, what I want to say is that I woke up crying this morning. I woke up crying because I was dreaming about my older, dearly departed brother. My brother passed away October 3rd, 2018 from pancreatic cancer. And in the dream, I don't remember everything we were talking about, but I remember the feeling. And the feeling was that, uh, two older men initially were having a serious talk. I remember looking in his eyes and he was talking to me about things and I was talking to him. And maybe it got a little heated. And then at some point in the dream, it morphed into into faces from when we were children. Well, when I was a child and he was a teenager. And then it transformed into a dream, that part of the dream where it featured one of my nieces and her sister, who has both her legs. Dee Dee, if you're watching this, it was you and your sister in Atlanta. And they both were talking, and I was like, and Dee Dee, by the way, is my brother's daughter. So I was like, oh, this is an interesting dream when I woke up, but I was still crying. And you're like, well, why are you crying and why is this relevant to me? Right? Or relevant for what's happening in the world. I was crying because one thing that's interesting about my brother is that in terms of our astrology, I was born at his nodal reversal, meaning that my nodes were completely opposite in position to where his nodes were. So we could bring out the best and the worst in each other. And one of the things I started thinking about with that fact is that I didn't always do my work in bringing out the best in him. There may have been moments I tried, but I don't think I consistently doing that. And I'm not doing this to publicly reprimand myself or just agree, but to highlight something that also came to me as I was thinking about this nodal reversal. My nodes are actually in the same positions as they are now, and not to the same exact degree, but the same positions in the same sense of the north node is in Aries and the south node in Libra. He was born with the north node in Libra and his south node in Aries, just to clarify. And why that's significant is, I've generally talked about the Aries-Libra nodal axis as more the circuit of interdependence. I've talked about it as the balance between courage and consideration. But what really hit me, what struck me, is that I was not kind to my brother. And I realized of all the different human virtues that we could applaud and laud, I've become convinced that kindness is probably the most profound one. And what was interesting to kind of also think about is that I have done all this study of astrology for over 30 years. So I knew that, but I did not practice that, especially with someone close to me like my brother, my complete blood sibling, both parents, mother and father. And that struck me that it's one thing to learn all these different elements of astrology, as many of you may be doing, but to not practice it, to not put it into your life and put it into what I think is one of the highest virtues or sub-virtues of the highest virtue, which I think is love. Kindness, I think, is a lack of wisdom. And I think the real pursuit of astrology is wisdom. And to practice that wisdom. And the wisdom isn't so much about yeah, I know this and I know how to look at Pluto, and I can look at the synastry between you and him, and it's not going to work out, girl. All these other things, if it's not put into the practice of improving our lives, it's the same feeling I have about prayer. Now, if you're a Muslim or you're a Christian or you're Jewish or whatever you are, if you can pray and not have kindness, if you can pray and not have wisdom, if you can pray and feel like you have this relationship with God but not with your other human beings, what is the point? How is God not reflected in what is all around us? And not even reflected, even living through all around us. So one of the things I want people to think about, especially with this being a South Node eclipse tomorrow. You're like, what do you mean it's a South Node eclipse? Well, the eclipses actually do relate to the nodal axis, the North and South Node, and to be a certain number of degrees away from or close to the eclipses. So what's going to happen is that the sun and moon are coming together tomorrow in Libra. And then, by virtue of that, they're going to be close to the South Node eclipse. So the South Node eclipse becomes more about where we have this release. One thing I'm going to introduce to you from a book by Judith Hill. She talks about power outages. This is where we have, maybe not literally power outages. I'm not predicting a power outage anywhere in the world tomorrow, although that could happen. But that's not what I'm predicting. But where we feel a drain, where energy releases from us. And so what becomes important to think about when you have a South Node eclipse is, what do we need to release? And clearly, waking up crying means that I needed to release something related to my brother. And more so in terms of thinking about how I can be kind. And what's really important during this time frame, and I'm going to go more into this in just a brief minute, is to emphasize where we are not being kind to ourselves, where we are not being kind to others, and also to appreciate where others have been kind to us. And I think those things really become important because I don't think we emphasize that enough. And I hadn't really even thought about the South Node in Libra, a sign of Venus, related to this particular idea of kindness. So I really do want you to meditate and reflect on where kindness lives in your life, especially now that Mars is in Scorpio. Now, as I talked about a few days ago with my Nictanastic horoscopes, when something happens, because everything in astrology happens in the cycle, it's just a matter of whether it's happening sooner or later, more recently, or it's farther back in our history. But Mars was in Scorpio roughly at around the same time, at the end of October in 2021, and going through through November. And in terms of the world, which may not be the same thing as what's happening in your life, because I'm encouraging you to do two things: to reflect on what's happening for the world, or what was happening for the world in 2021, and to also reflect on what was happening in your life. Now you're like, Sam, it was the pandemic. The pandemic was happening in 2021. Yes, but a lot of other things happened also in 2021 that I like to draw your attention to, and why kindness becomes really important to contemplate and work with during this particular time frame. So among the things that happened also in 2021 with Mars and Scorpio is that we had some actual breakouts of fights in Afghanistan. And we also had, in terms of Sudan, more fighting. There was a high-rise collapse in Lagos. And like I said, the Afghanistan conflict that ensued at that time, or started happening just around time Mars was in Scorpio, actually becomes the prelude to what we see falling, or the fall of the government in Afghanistan, that led to the U.S. leaving in the following year. So I want you to, or that August, I believe. Either it was in 21 or it was in 22. Forgive me, I'm mixing years up in that sense. But it was the prelude to that. And then we also had the Tigray War in Ethiopia. And this is the general thing I have learned. I'm just going back to 2021 because that's more immediate. But one thing I have been looking at when Mars comes home, because he's home in two signs, Aries and Scorpio. There are different things that happen. When he comes home in Aries, there usually is explosions. There's maybe some natural things that happen. He brings gusts of energy. He still brings gusts of energy in Scorpio, but because it's in a water sign rather than a fire sign, it becomes more emotional. So I'm going to say something pretty strong. Mars in Scorpio is murderous. Don't take that too far, but do not confuse mundane astrology with personal or what we call natal astrology. I am not saying that people with Mars in Scorpio are murderous people. I just hosted a beautiful, loving, caring woman with Mars in Scorpio in my home for about 7 days, who's a healer, an acupuncturist. So there's no way in this person being a murderer or a murderess. But in terms of what can be happening in the quote-unquote collective, this is something important to realize, that Mars in Scorpio can surface emotions and roiling conflicts that have been simmering for a while to a full boil. And we can see this already has happened to some degrees, the prelude to Mars going in Scorpio. Just as he was going to Scorpio, at the very last degree of Libra, we're seeing in Palestine. So we can expect even more with that. So kindness becomes the operative thing to think about. I am not asking anyone to change their politics. I'm not talking about, having to forgive or whatever. But how can we be better kind to each other with those around us? Even those who are farther from us, right? It's one thing that you dislike what one party does to another. But what about the people in between? Civilians, children, other people who, physically challenged people. Where can we deal with those measures of kindness and help improve their lives, which also help enrich our lives? So I do want you to think about that related to this Mars in Scorpio moment, as we're dealing with a South Node eclipse along the Libra-Aries axis. If you want to dive more into this, there's a couple different things you can do. One is, if you want to study astrology, I am going to start with a new round of beginners classes starting next Sunday, October 22nd. The classes will start at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 8 a.m. Pacific, and then it will be 11 a.m. Eastern, and then 10 a.m. Central, if you're talking about the United States of America. For other places, you can correct that. It'll be for 14 weeks. And I really go in, they're called Nitty Gritty 1, and I go more into building your understanding of astrology from the ground up. So that even though we don't talk as much about eclipses, we can during office hours, we will be talking about understanding not just the mechanics, but some of the symbolic and historical and ancient visions of astrology, bringing them into a modern view. The other way that you can learn more about eclipses and astrology is starting with this book. This is Eclipses in You by Judith Hill, subtitle How to Align with Life's Hidden Tides. This is one of the best books, I think, on the market related to eclipses. I highly recommend it. It has things in here for various rising signs, so she goes into the rising signs. She also talks about what to do during the eclipse. So, because people have been asking me, like, what are you going to do for the eclipse tomorrow, Sam? Well, as I said the other day, one, I'm going to be silent and know that there is God. I'm also going to head to a pool, and I'm going to get in water. One of the things that she also recommends and talks about, but I read elsewhere, is that it's good to be near a body of water, either in it And I'm not telling anyone to do anything crazy. You do not have to go polar bear swimming in your lake or wherever. You can be in your bathtub. You can be in your shower. You can be at your sink. Just being near water in that sense is a way to deflect, they say, the energy that comes from the eclipses, because they're highly charged. And it is a South Node eclipse. And you're like, well, what's the South Node about? The South Node is where we have the release of things. The dragon's tail, you know? I said the dragon's tail, where the shit comes out, right? Where the things come out. You know, where you need to release and have more the drain of energy. The other book may be harder to get. It's not in print. I have found this book really interesting. I've talked about this on Instagram before. Now it's also going to appear on YouTube. This is Robert Karl Jansky's Interpreting the Eclipses. He was a brilliant astrologer who we lost way too early. He died something like 40 years ago. But he goes also more into the nature of eclipses and explains even a little more about the Saros cycle, which is an 18-year cycle of the eclipses, looking at families of eclipses and how they work together, starting from either the North or South Pole, moving up or moving down over thousands of years. So this eclipse that's happening tomorrow is an eclipse that's been in motion since the 13th century. So there's been different permutations of eclipse and this eclipse in different signs for over 800 years, close to 900 years. So this is a very powerful eclipse in that sense. Now, that's the Saros cycle, which operates in 18 years. The Metonic cycle, when I talked to you about reflecting on what happened 19 years ago, is more so when, if you've lived that long, what was happening 19 years ago, not just in October or November, but even maybe about a month or so before and 3 months after. And what kind of situations were you in and how were you dealing with them? This is your second chance or third chance, or chance to kind of rectify and work with it. And to, one, remember to be kind to yourself. Even though I said earlier that I was not kind to my brother, that doesn't mean I'm going to spend the rest of the day or the week or whatever reprimanding myself. It's a reminder to be kind to those who are around me now. And, you know, this is what you have to focus on, to forgive even yourself. Now, again, I'm not asking anyone to kind of, you know, run over to the other aisle and have to forgive someone that has done you some serious harm if you don't feel ready to do that, because I understand that. But when you feel like your anger, your wrath, your sadness is weighing you down, it may be a time to release that, enlighten your load, enlighten your heart. So that's what I have to say for now. Thank you for tuning in. I didn't get to see everybody. Oh, here we go. It wasn't moving up. So sorry. I didn't greet everyone as I normally do. Forgive me. Yeah. Lindsay joined. Hi. Hi, Lindsay. Oh, thank you, Teresa. I didn't see all the things that you guys were saying. So, hey, Gabe, what's going on? So, thank you, everybody. But, yeah, I do want you guys to meditate on many of the things I've shared. Some people have asked, like, well, you know, especially those of you who are in the Southwest, specifically in, you know, Santa Fe, should I go out and see it? That's a very personal decision. Personally, I'm not going to expose myself to the baleful rays of a South Node eclipse. And when I say expose myself, literally be out there with them. Oh, there's Regina from Brazil. Hello. Hey, Ebony. So I think, you know, that's a decision you can make for yourself. Hey, Annalicia. But, because eclipses are powerful things to behold and see in nature. So those things are... Imani! Hello, Imani. I'm so proud of you, Imani. Imani is going to be speaking at NORWAC. One of my students will be speaking at NORWAC come May. NORWAC is an astrology conference, so that is great. And they have also been doing great work in terms of writing and other things. So keep going, sister. Anyway, I'm going to move on. I am glad so many of you have joined. And do your best with the eclipse tomorrow. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy Friday the 13th. I've been binge watching with my friend who was here. They're now gone back to New York, but I was binge watching The Bear, so I'm looking forward to checking out season 2 of The Bear. That's how I'm gonna, enjoy things a little more. All right, take care, and I'll see you all later.